Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Hare Krishna Project podcast. This is episode number 99. We're just one episode away from our 100th episode. I don't know about you, but whenever I think about or hear the number 99, I think of those ice creams that are called 99ers. I don't know why they're called 99ers, but this is episode number 99. Do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, to hit the subscribe button so you keep updated about future podcasts. And if you're watching this on Facebook, please also click like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page so you kept updated about future podcasts here at the Hare Krishna Project as well. I'm hugely grateful to our now global audience. It's always a little bit, I don't know, nerve-wracking to know that people from all over the world get in touch with us here at the Hare Krishna Project because you kind of like what we do and you like our approach to having conversations about real issues, whatever you mean by real. So absolutely delighted to welcome our 99th guest. Please welcome Gauranga Sundara Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
It's fantastic to have you with us. You and I have known of each other for about 3.5 years. You kindly took part in the research for my book on the Hare Krishnas of Britain, and you were one of the people that I convinced to be interviewed for the book all those years ago. And finally, I've got around to inviting you onto this podcast, which is great. So, Gauranga Sundara Prabhu, the first question is the same first question that everyone gets. It's a nice, easy one. So here we go. Please tell us a bit about you and where you're from.
I'm originally been born and coming from Germany, where I met the Hare Krishna devotees. And then I was in France for 8 years in the 80s, in New Mayapur, in the farm community in rural France, which was formative years in Krishna consciousness, I would almost say. Very nice, very nice. And then in 88, I came to Leicester, and still I'm in Leicester.
Wow. So you've been in Leicester for 35 years.
Yes, time is passing by. And since I came in contact with Krishna consciousness, that is also 48 years. Where is this gone? 48 years.
Wow.
More than half a lifetime.
So quick math. So 1975, you met the devotees. So did you, just so I kind of understand, did you have any kind of religious upbringing? What was your kind of family background?
Well, Catholic family, but not particular practicing, except we are chased to the church every Sunday. And that was it. And I got a little bit involved at a young age with some youth group. And somehow or other, when the priest started drinking and smoking with the other youth, I questioned, what's that? He's not supposed to do that. And then the argument was, to get closer to the young people, you have to fall in with their habits. And I didn't like that, even then.
And was that something that, I don't know, kind of led you to look for something a bit more pure?
Well, I was searching all my life, I would say. Well, when I was young, I was an altar boy. So I was actually involved. I was an altar boy. I loved it. The rituals and the bells and this and the rope and the frankincense and all of that. So I was an altar boy for a period of my life. And then I was on the search for many, many years, which led me actually to some impersonalist. Well, before that, Rudolf Steiner, who is an anthroposoph who is quite known. There's a Steiner schools all over the world. And that's the first time I read Initiation and things like that, because Rudolf Steiner made a mix between Bhagavad Gita and Christianity. So much came over. And so I heard about concepts which I never heard before. So very interesting. And after Steiner, it was a big book, Paul Brunton, The Wisdom of the Overself. It was all impersonal, but it was attractive. At least the realization was I'm eternal. I didn't know that before, so it was quite liberating. I'm eternal. And I was hooked up to that book until, and Srila Prabhupada, I recently came across a purport, said somewhere, Srila Prabhupada was very merciful, said the impersonal path can be helping us. I never heard that from Prabhupada. Normally it's just, it can be helping us. And until we meet a pure devotee. And that exactly happened to me. When I got the Bhagavad Gita, as it is, and read Srila Prabhupada's purport, then there was no question of even ever touching the wisdom of the overself from Paul Brunton. I mean, that was it. That was it. I realized there is water right from the source. Not a mile down, not even half a mile, not even 5 meters down, right at the source. And I loved every bit of it. And I do well remember Srila Prabhupada is saying, using the language, these rascals and this and that. And I thought, oh, wow, I like that. Someone is speaking out what I was always thinking when it came to scientists and this and that. So it gelled with me immediately.
So how did you meet the devotees 48 years ago? Did you meet them in the streets, or kind of what was going on in your life at the time?
Well, I saw the devotees in the streets, and they had a procession, choreographed, dancing, and at the sidewalks, right and left, there were devotees giving out literature. It looked so strange to me. I made a big turn around, not to be spoken to. It was just, I did not know what to do with that. Then later on, one devotee pushed a single on me, recording, single, recorded. One side was Hansadutta, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. On the other side was Himavati with Tulasi Krishna. I couldn't get this single off my record player. It played day and night. It was another world. Never heard anything like that. So that was very nice. And then for some time I lived in a commune, so to speak, and with quite a good number of people. And one day a girl came and said, I want to join you guys. Yes, we have some room still. There was a big house. No problem, but I have to go in town shopping. Well, after a few hours, she came back and she said, well, I met the Hare Krishna devotees in town. I joined the nearby temple. I changed my mind. And she gave me a Bhagavad Gita, a beautiful German Bhagavad Gita in Bible paper with a completely fire red hardbound. I still have that. And that was my first Bhagavad Gita. And a poster she gave me. I believe it was Krishna and Arjuna on the chariot. And then she said, bye-bye, I'm joining the temple. That was beautiful. That was absolutely. So that made all the difference. That connection was there. But it was just a book. Previously, I wasn't a bookstore because as I was searching all my life, really. And from a certain point. And I had Bhagavad Gita from Maharishi in my hand. And somehow or other, I looked at it, and so there was already some attraction that Bhagavad Gita. That probably came from Steiner. He mentions Bhagavad Gita. So I looked for Bhagavad Gita, but I didn't buy it. I just in the bookshop looked a little bit through it. So then I had the Bhagavad Gita, and I opened it whenever I felt like, and there was always a useful instruction for me, always. As Bhagavad Gita is like that. If you cannot do this, then do that. If you cannot do that, then do that and do that. And so that was beautiful.
Wow. So this was the mid 1970s in Germany.
Yes, must have been.
Did you meet Srila Prabhupada in the kind of physical sense?
Well, let's first come to, it was just the books of Bhagavad Gita. I didn't know there were people until I was in a stressful period of my life. And then for the first time, I discovered there was actually an address. There was an address in the Bhagavad Gita. Oh, wow, there are some people. So I phoned and I said, yes, come. We are in the townhouse in Schloss Rettershof Castle. Come visit us on a weekend. So I came. And at that time, there was big newspaper, child kidnapping and weapons found and sect, like that. So scary stuff. So then the devotee who was Suchantra at the time is Bhakti Bhushan Swami in Argentina, I believe so. And so I brought it to him. He picked me up on the train station. And I brought it to him. What about these stories in the press? Oh, that's me, he said. That's me, the kidnapper. I said, oh, wow. So he told his story. His wife became a prostitute and he took their daughter in and the press made a big story out of it. So that was that. And then I visited the temple. That was also interesting. I visited later on with my friend in Germany. And well, we didn't know anything. Also, the word is bowing down. Jai Vishnu Pad. And so naturally, I bowed down. But my friend didn't bow down. He said, I don't bow down in front of anyone. So he lost out. And I do believe I don't understand why he's bowing down, but I just do. And in due course of time, I will understand. Yes. So Krishna's mercy was easily accessible in that way. And a critical point came also when the head Pujari, Astarata, he one day said, go behind the castle. There are some little white flowers, Maybells or whatever they're called. They have a very nice scent. These are Radharani's favorite flowers. I more or less knew they have some really beautiful Radha Krishna deities, Radha Madan Mohan, small marble deities. So I picked some flowers for Radharani. And I believe that little service was my entrance, my real entrance to Krishna consciousness. The door was open. I did some service for Radharani. And the next morning, Radharani had these very same flowers holding in her hand. So, yes, it so happened that in 76, being in Germany, the devotee said, Srila Prabhupada is coming to France, to Paris, and to London. Anyone who wants to come, you're most welcome. So first he goes to France and he goes to London. So I put my name forward to go to France. That was first. And we drove in a minibus, in a Toyota Hiace, with a dozen of devotees. And I do remember my dear friend, elderly gentleman, Ratna Garba Prabhu. He came, we had often discussion because he came from a Christian background and he spoke a lot about Christianity. Was he a priest or something? I don't know. So he was supposed to get Brahmin initiated. So he's chanting, I don't know, 10 hours, 12 hours or more journey from Germany to France. Continuously he was chanting while others were eating and this and that. He was just not even eating, he was just chanting. That was very impressive. And then we couldn't find the place. It was in the forest. It was a castle in the forest, so to speak. So we missed it, and nobody spoke French. And so we figured out we went too far. We came back, and there was a little road into the forest. And so we drove there, and there were some devotees around. And someone said, "Srila Prabhupada is giving a class here. Come quickly. He's sitting in the grass outside, and he's giving some darshan. He's answering some questions." At that time, I hardly could speak any English, I have to say. So we rushed out of the car. I remember I put some tilak on in the car mirror, and there was Srila Prabhupada sitting on the grass, and a circle of devotees sitting, and the next circle standing around. And Srila Prabhupada was like someone from another planet. He was not from this world. That was my impression. He was so effulgent. He was very small. I didn't imagine that, very small. He looked downwards, his eyes closed. And he talked, and then devotees asking questions. And he talked, and I didn't understand nothing. But I was so fascinated. I couldn't get my eyes off Srila Prabhupada. He was like an alien from another planet. And then, and that is a subjective, we have heard that kind of thing from many devotees. Then he looked up, and he looked straight at me. Not at me, inside me. He looked through my eyes down to the bottom of my heart. Like devotees have explained, it's like an X-ray. And it not only look this lifetime, but many lifetimes. And that look very clearly meant for me, oh, you're also here. Since ever, I'm thinking about that. Oh, you're also here, a bit of a surprise, but also a confirmation that that was not the first time we met. Oh, you're also here. But that was interesting. That's what I understand from that first meeting. It appears like a long time. It may have been only a few seconds. Then we only saw Srila Prabhupada 3 times. Then one time when he installed Krishna Balaram deities, because he was very ill at that time. So it was 66. So he started off the installation of Krishna Balaram, and then he left and the devotees continued. It was the second time. And the third time, when the devotees took prasadam, it's a castle like the Bhaktivedanta Manor, kind of, with a lawn behind. So devotees are sitting on the lawn, respecting prasadam. Suddenly someone shouted, "Srila Prabhupada ki jai!" We turned around, and on the top window, there was Srila Prabhupada with a big smile and enjoying the devotees taking prasad. That was that time. And then at the time was morning address in the temple room, and I was quite close by, 3 meters maybe, holding my little tape recorder and recording it. It turned out that nobody recorded that class ever. Srila Prabhupada spoke about Brahminical culture. So with a 100 minutes cassette tape, I recorded that class, and later on I gave it to the Bhaktivedanta archives.
Wow.
Beautiful class. And Srila Prabhupada was very ill. He had to spit out his mucus in the pots from time to time.
Mm.
And that was a class. Not much I could understand from that, if anything. And then he was only there for 3 days, I believe so. And then he left. And from the other side, the castle, the steps down, they carried him in a chair. And then in a car, Mercedes. And then the car slowly drove off. And then not only everybody's heart was filled with, pulled in all directions. Devotees cried and chanted, and me too. And we walked along the car, and Srila Prabhupada, he waved outside to the devotees. And the car went, there was a long driveway down to the tarmac road. And I found myself as if propelled, not by my own will, but I found myself running beside that car and full dandavat in high grass and prickles, whatever there was, and running, catching up, and dandavats, and running, catching up, and dandavats. And most devotees by then have been left behind. There are only a small group of 5 or 6 devotees who pursued the car until the road down there. And we offered our obeisances, and the car disappeared. And we stood there and gazed in the distance for a long time. And it felt, little did I know, that I would not see or meet Srila Prabhupada ever again. So we went back into the temple room, and then our Lord Chanananda, he sang a very heartfelt Nisingha prayers, which was a bit soothing. And that was that meeting in 76 in Mayapur in France.
Wow. The way you talk about it, it's like it was just yesterday.
Yes,
In terms of the detail that you go into. It is obviously etched on your mind, even though it was 46 years ago. 46 years ago.
Yes.
It's 47 years ago. It's quite remarkable that you remember it so well.
Well, there is little bits in between, but we have a limited time. So that was that. But I always tell the devotees, also that was an extremely special experience. But that is not the defining thing what makes the attachment to Srila Prabhupada. And the attachment is there. There is no question. Srila Prabhupada is my life and soul. Full stop. And some people say, we don't use that in ISKCON, Sadguru. Yes, Srila Prabhupada is an eternal guru. There is no question that I found him again in this lifetime. As Srila Prabhupada, there's this beautiful story where Srila Prabhupada told the devotees, and that rings with me, that story. He says to the devotees, you must have been all Brahmins in your last lifetime. Because how else could you come so quickly to Krishna consciousness, take up Krishna consciousness? And then he leaned back with a big smile, and then he said, and now we are together again. Wow, how beautiful is that? Now we are together again. These are not things from just one lifetime, no question. No question. Not only for me, for many others too.
Mm. Wow.
So I tell the devotees that is actually not the defining that meeting Srila Prabhupada. What makes an attachment is just hearing Srila Prabhupada, hearing. Therefore, I say to everyone, anyone can develop an attachment for Srila Prabhupada, and anyone can accept Srila Prabhupada, at least as a Shiksha Guru. Everybody can. It's not because I personally met Srila. That is not the defining It's just that attachment develops just by hearing, by hearing, and by hearing. That's all.
Mm. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's really nice to hear the story of meeting Prabhupada in that way in 1976. So did you then stay in France?
Yes, for 8 years.
And you lived at New Mayapur?
Yes, I had some service there. I did some deity worship of Giri Govardhan there. And I did the Gurukul. I worked in the Gurukul in the afternoon, some leisure activities. I did some pottery with the children, with clay. And they loved it. That was their favorite activity. And then we also went out. There was forest and roaming around. And yes, so Gurukul and deity worship.
I have to admit, I've never been to New Mayapur. I've been to the ISKCON Temple in Paris, which is, I think, different from the previous Paris temple.
Yes.
And I've recently visited another Hare Krishna Temple in Rouen in France, which is not ISKCON; it's still Gaudiya Vaishnav. What was living at New Mayapur like in the 1980s?
It was very austere. We, because I had my children with me, I had 3 children with me. We had a little, they call it in French, alchico, which is a little builder's wooden hut, almost like a shepherd's hut, but with no wheels. And they stood in a line outside, and the road was a construction road. It was mud, deep, deep mud. So it was just there. It was a very tight place with a wood oven. And so at least we were warm, and bunk beds inside and not much more. Sometimes, I mean, I had to take the children to program. It's dark in the morning. You could only walk with boots, and suddenly, my boot got stuck in the mud. Oh, it was an austere place. But as Indradyumna Swami, he was there, Indradyumna Swami, for a long time. He was temple president, and we were very close in the sense that I worked with him on the soundtrack for the famous Nrsimhadev drama, which every year was enacted and played out. And I was with some older Gurukul boy. We did the soundtrack and live in the play as well, with 2 tape recorders, 1 cassette in, another out, and another one in, and so bits and pieces of the soundtrack. So, as I say, these were formative years in Krishna consciousness, where I gave my first class. My first class. Why did I give the first class? Because Indradyumna Swami went away, and he knew I was very concerned about in the deity department, the curtains should open on time. And he was also, he said, you must open the curtains on time. So he said, Gauranga Sundara, you give me a report when I come back, if everything was going all right. And I took that very literal, and I wrote it all down. Okay, 1 minute late, 5 minutes late, and this and that. Krishna Balaram's cup was not on the altar when the curtain opened for darshan, and so on. And I overdid it. Because those pujaris, the ladies, they were senior devotees. They were Prabhupada disciples. And so I was a little bit impudent here. And so when he came back, and so he said, okay, Gauranga Sundara, tomorrow you give Bhagavatam class. He put me on the spot. Oh my God, tomorrow you give Bhagavatam class. I was frightened. And I had to do it. So I did kirtan. I felt fairly confident. Harmonium kirtan. And I just kept on and saying, maybe I'll do 3/4 of kirtan, and then at one point Indradyumna Swami said, okay, that's enough kirtan. And the class came. So I was frightened, I get blank and don't know what to say. It didn't happen. And years later, one of the devotees, Prabhupada disciple, older devotees, we met at London Ratha Yatra, and he said, I remember that class. That was actually a very nice class. So here we go.
All those years later. So let's fast forward a little bit to 1988. I think that was the year that you left France.
Yes.
And you moved to Leicester.
Yes.
In the UK. I mean, what a place. You can pick any city in the UK, but you go to Leicester. How and why did that happen?
Because my older son, he was ahead of us in Leicester with a friend. And we were still in France. And he said, I'm not coming back. So, okay, what to do? So we all moved to Leicester. We moved to Leicester. So it happened like that. And then Jagat Purush, older devotee, Prabhupada man, he was the temple president there. And at one point, because he did out for maintaining his family, so we said, Gauranga Sundara, why can you not just be temple president there? I said, no, I refused. I was not ready for that. And only years later, when the temple, nothing was happening. Nothing was really happening. Nobody was taking care. There was no congregation. There was nothing. There were no deities, nothing. So somehow or other, it came again to me and they asked me. I said, okay, my whole personal situation was more favorable then also. Okay, I agreed to. I didn't see myself, not temple president. There were no devotees really. There were a few irregular members from the Indian community. I was a caretaker. And for 10 years, and that temple took shape, little by little by little. We wanted devotees there. And that was very hard. Because we got some new bhaktas, but as soon as they went to the manor, they never came back. So that was always a struggle. And I have been told once you have 4 or 5 devotees, then they might stay. So there was a tension with the manor because they pinched our devotees. So not nice. We're trying to develop something here, and it's impossible to develop something here. So eventually we did, with lots of sweat and blood. We invited international devotees, which was nice to have devotees there, but also it had its problems because you putting together different nationalities and there is tension also. We have some from South America. We had quite a few Russians. We had some Leicester people as well, devotees, bhaktas. And we had the support of the GBC at the time, which was Shivaram Swami. He really supported us in that way of you make a nice, comfortable place for the devotees and they will stay. And you do book distribution. Yes. So for the first time in a long history of Leicester, devotees went out on book distribution. And they met other people and brought them back to the temple, and it was a really lively atmosphere. Until Sriram Swami resigned as GBC in the UK. I had not any idea how that would impact the Leicester situation, my situation. Suddenly, that person who gave certain amount of protection and inspiration and initiated devotees, we did not know how initiation, how accomplish that. And then we figured out there was a process of getting devotees initiated, of getting them. We did Bhakti Shastri, we did cultivated them bit by bit by bit, and congregation as well. And we did the Bhakti Riksha program. We had certificates for devotees who chanted 4 rounds and 8 rounds and all of that just to encourage them. And then suddenly things started to develop very nicely, with hundreds of books distributed. And then as Shivaram Swami went away, everything, I use a strong language. The vultures circled above. Others wanted to take over that position and that temple. And if I would have seen the signs on the wall, I would have at that point resigned and left. That would have been good, but I didn't. So there was a lot of politics to get me out.
In which, just to for context, in which year did Shivaram Swami step down as GBC for the UK?
No, I don't remember.
2005?
I don't know. Okay, yes, maybe.
I'm trying to think. I was told once, based on something else someone told me, and I'm trying to think in my head without saying names, which year it was. Yeah. 17. I think it was 2004, 2005.
Could be, yes.
And so before then, you had been temple president ISKCON Leicester. You were very well supported by the GBC. Lots of books being distributed. The ISKCON devotee community was growing in Leicester.
Yes.
Were you attracting kind of white Westerners as well as Indians?
Yes. They were mostly Westerners. The Russians were Westerners. We had some local Westerners. We had some South American. They were all Westerners. And then there was a congregation. They were all Indians.
Because I mean, my knowledge isn't obviously as great as yours, but the current building where ISKCON Leicester is, it was a different, ISKCON met in a different building before.
Yes.
Was it smaller than the? I mean, I think probably was.
Smaller. Yeah, much smaller. It was a residential property with the extension, modified residential property, 2-story property.
Just to clarify for me and anyone that's watching who doesn't know, why did Shivaram Swami step down as GBC around that time?
That's a good question. He wanted to focus on his Hungarian project. That was one reason. And they gave him a hard time here in the UK. So wanted to send him on courses of management and this and that. And they gave him a hard time. I saw that personally. So it's not like in Hungary, he's a boss. As a manner, he wasn't really. So he had enough, and he got Pragoshin. Then everything changed. Everything. All my services were taken away. I was living, that was also a big difference. Nobody was living in the temple previously, and nothing could develop. We had one devotee staying there alone or two, and they left. How can you develop something if devotees are left alone? So I decided to give up my residential property and move into the temple. And then things started to build up because there was someone, a senior man there, and things starting to develop. So eventually they got me out of the temple. And my last service I had was getting food donations from the wholesale market and bringing it to the temple for the Food for Life program. So Food for Life program had already taken over by other devotees, the new management team. And so one day I brought the food donations. I remember that very well, standing in front door. And they said, we don't need your food donations anymore. We're getting our own. So that service was also taken away. So what a devotee without service? it felt like you just merge into the Brahmajyoti. That's the best you can do. Huh? No, we can't do that. So, and there were some devotees that trying to disperse the devotees who had shelter. And so I had with me a few devotees, so I had to give some shelter. So we had another property, which was previously not far away from the temple, which previously occupied by the Matajis. We had some Mataji ashram, and we had the Prabhus in the temple and Matajis in a different building. So we took over that building with the devotees, and I asked the GBC at the time, I remember that meeting also very well, can we need some service, myself and the devotees with me, can we do some service in conjunction with Parashuram, Food for Life? And the answer was no. No. Again, go away. Not in Leicester. They want to install a new management, which I understand. Someone from the Indian background being a manager for mostly Indian congregation. And the concept was pushed. Nobody should live in the temple. No ashram, no more ashram. Yes, there were lots of challenges with an ashram, 2 ashrams, one for Madhajis and one for men. There were challenges, of course, but no more ashram. Everybody, the temple is just a place where devotees come for worship once a week. That's it. So they want to install someone from an Indian background. I purposely don't say Indian devotees. Devotees are not Indian or German or this or that, but from an Indian background, and which was suitable. But the way they got me out of the way, that was absolutely horrendous. I don't want to dwell on that, but that was really the lowest of the lowest. If the management wants to do something, they're using all kinds of tactics. And I mean, just one example. Either you can go with Puri Maharaj at the time, Balabhadra, Scotland. You can go with him to South Africa for some time. I didn't. With the devotees we had with us, it didn't feel right. In fact, it was a good decision we didn't go, because Puri Maharaj didn't go eventually. And then we negotiated, can we just for a few devotees go to Vrindavan? Okay, eventually they sponsored that. That's the only thing ever we got back from ISKCON. They sponsored us a trip to Vrindavan. Not out of concern for the devotees, but because they felt as long as Gauranga Sundara is there, we cannot install a new management. That will not work. So,
and
get him out of the way.
Why so badly did they want to get rid of you?
Because they wanted to install a management which was brought up and
Okay.
by the manor. It's basically an extension of the manor. Because the Indian congregation is very, I mean, I caused some trouble for the Bhaktivedanta manor, because according to resolutions, no one can do fundraising in another area without getting permission of them. And then one day we were down at the manor, and there were stacks and stacks of letters fundraising for Janmashtami. Leicester, 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 Leicester. So I raised that question. Well, we haven't been asked. So you're doing fundraising in Leicester behind our back. So how can we develop a temple? How can we? So these kind of things, they caused upset at the management, because they regarded the whole country their backyard. And if you go along with that, then you'll be all right. If you're not going along with that, then we'll get rid of you. Mana is very strong, very strong.
Mm.
So anyway.
It sounds there's an element of racism here, isn't there? Because in one sense, I know what's very frustrating and upsetting is that we are meant to be part of a spiritual movement where the first fundamental teaching is we are not the body. Before we try and understand the nature of God or the divine or the God as the supreme person, first we need to try and understand ourselves. Who are we? And the first fundamental thing is not that Krishna is God. That's a very close second. The first thing is that we're not the body. And it sounds like you were removed literally because of the color of your skin or your nationality in this life. And you kind of expect that from other kind of political groups or sectarian groups, not the Hare Krishnas. You know?
It's a ABC. You are not the body. But it's so difficult, particularly for the Indian community. It's so difficult. I just recently had a conversation with someone. I said, in a context we talked, you're not Gujarati, meaning to say you're spirit soul. And the answer came very strongly immediately, I am Gujarati. Oh. So I'm coming to the realization, maybe we cannot, maybe not everybody can reach the higher platforms of Krishna consciousness. Maybe some are just really satisfied with more or less ritualistic activities and puja and deity worship in particular, and maybe they don't go beyond that level. Okay, so be it. That is also one thing. I thought it would be nice to lift them up to higher levels of bhakti, at least to some madhyama level, at least. Therefore, I always emphasize preaching. And anyway, so we'll have to do with what we have.
I find your story very upsetting because effectively ISKCON made you homeless. In reality, that's what happened. You were living in the temple and you were made homeless.
Yes.
An organization that's meant to be caring for people's needs, providing shelter in not just spiritual shelter, but also physical shelter, material shelter. You were serving as temple president for about a decade at that point, I think, and you were made homeless. Just because the powers that be wanted someone else to have that position as temple president for ISKCON Leicester. So what happened for you then personally? You had to find a new home. What happened also with this lady's ashram, the other property?
Well, we and I moved into that property. And because that property belonged to a really good friend, devotee friend of mine, so we moved into that property. And we carried on with the devotees with us, of going door to door and book distribution. And after we have been told, you cannot even work with Parashuram, so no service at all, then we opened a charity. It was a big offense. We opened a charity. And stupidly, I announced that before the procedure was finished to the GBC at the time. We have already opened the charity, I said. So what happened? They sent us a police on our neck into the house. They sent us a police. At that point, they rejected by the Charity Commission because there is ISKCON Leicester, the official ISKCON, and we have applied for Hare Krishna Centre for Vedic Studies. That was our charitable name. And then they argued with the Charity Commission that that is donations which are destined for ISKCON Leicester might go to the Hare Krishna Centre for Vedic Studies. So there cannot be another Hare Krishna charity in the same town. Interesting enough, I spoke with Jayapataka Swami. He said, in my zone, there are 2 different temples in the same town. There's no problem at all. What's the problem? Cooperate. So then the police came and said, we heard you collecting funds from door to door and selling books, but you're not a charity. 2 police officers. And just the day before, we got the sanction of the Charity Commission. Just the day before. So we showed the police, no, we are charity here. Oh, that's okay, then. Okay, nice, bye-bye. So that did not. I mean, the fight went so far. You can hardly imagine that we had a website, and we wrote on our website, dedicated to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And then they said, official ISKCON, GBC management, you cannot dedicate your website or your organization to Srila Prabhupada. Only we can do that. Okay, I took some legal advice and confronted them with that, and that was the end of that. But the fact that think you cannot dedicate your website to Srila Prabhupada, that speaks volumes. I always tell a very nice story because ISKCON, because even still today from the official ISKCON Temple, the devotees are mostly okay. In fact, there is some nostalgia now there. Some nostalgia when you speak to the older devotees. Oh, we had such a nice time when you were temple president. Some nostalgia coming back after so many years. Huh? Very interesting to see that. But there has been repeated attempts. You are not ISKCON. So what is ISKCON? We are not ISKCON if you define it legally. We are not ISKCON legally. We are not in the same legal entity as ISKCON. But neither is Coventry. It's not ISKCON Coventry. It's a charity under Shri Radha Krishna Cultural Centre, not ISKCON. And we are separate charity, Hare Krishna Centre for Vedic Studies. So what's the difference? So interesting. We were not allowed to have any sannyasis or preachers, what to speak of gurus coming to the center. Can you imagine that? Nobody can. Of course, now looking back, maybe that was a blessing. Maybe that was a blessing because there would be so much confusion. And maybe, yes. Anyway, we tried a little bit getting some from some preachers from Birmingham, Narayan Maharaj's Sangha for some time, but that didn't feel the solution either, because our heart beats for Srila Prabhupada, not for A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. I don't like that. When anybody speaks of Srila Prabhupada, oh, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. For us, it's not A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, it's Srila Prabhupada. It's a very affectionate address. It's different. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, you're putting in a mile in between. Huh? Srila Prabhupada, you are close, an inch. So that didn't work out. So we came to the conclusion, let's just concentrate on Srila Prabhupada. Fully, 100%. And see, we're still doing that. And we haven't been the loser at all. Devotees are trained in, we regularly listen to classes of Srila Prabhupada. We're pushing. Srila Prabhupada, it feels just like the matchless gifts. It feels like that. In fact, we had, at one point we had a sign over, we have a shop front with a big shop window. We had a sign over matchless gifts. Later we have Hare Krishna Centre over it. So we have been ever since, and will continue until we leave this body of focusing on Srila Prabhupada. We had some occasions, for instance, the rare exception. Generally, when any preacher, I don't even try anymore. Preacher, what do you speak of sannyasis? What do you speak of gurus? You come and visit, we invite you, and then be told you cannot go there. If you go there, you're not welcome in the UK anymore. Imagine.
It's very authoritarian, isn't it?
Very, yes.
Which actually wasn't the intent. Which it wasn't the intention that Prabhupada had when he set up ISKCON. He wanted, there's a political buzz term, localism, which means local people in their communities making decisions for themselves. Absolutely. And actually, I mean, Prabhupada didn't use the word localism, but he talked about it in a different way, in terms of local temples looking after themselves and not too much top-down control. And this authoritarian nature of ISKCON is certainly not what Prabhupada wanted or intended at all.
It kills the enthusiasm of the local devotees. And Prabhupada said like that. It kills the local the enthusiasm. We don't want centralized management. We want localized management. Never mind if they have to do tax certificates separately. Local men should be trained to do all these services. That's what we want. Keep the enthusiasm alive and not begging for funds from the centralized entity. There is a beautiful story where one boy in a darshan, he was from Austria. There was no Krishna consciousness in Austria. He was not a devotee. He was just interested in of the devotees. And Srila Prabhupada turned to him and said, why don't you open a center in Austria? Srila Prabhupada, why don't you open a center? Empowered him to open a center in Austria. My God, and here now today you want to do anything, you don't get permission. If you want to achieve anything, just do it. Right? Just do it. And that's what we do. And that's what we did. And that's what we do.
What I've noticed recently, or certainly over the last year or two, there's a growing number of devotees, people in the UK, that are now setting up their own projects, that are doing their own thing. We're still following Prabhupada as best we can with faith, but we've decided to free ourselves from the top-down autocratic approach of the GBC, the management of ISKCON GBC. And you know what? You said something just now that I completely agree with. It was a blessing, a complete blessing. If you look at, yes, a blessing in disguise. If you look at ISKCON now and just all the issues it's dealing with, I wouldn't want to have anything to do with that. An organization that has a high number of leaders abusing children, and others, if they're not abusing children, they've covered up about it, is an organization that I really struggle to have anything that I want to have anything to do with. You know, it's certainly not as bad as the Catholic Church, but ISKCON smaller. But you could say it's certainly the same level. So what I've seen over the last year or two are devotees, ISKCON devotees, those of us that feel passionate about Prabhupada, are out there now just doing our own thing. And we're seeing results. We're seeing people take an interest in Bhakti Yoga. They're starting to chant the Maha Mantra, you know, and I think what's really impressive is you must have been running the Hare Krishna Centre now in Leicester for almost 20 years, maybe.
Yes, something like that.
And that's not just kind of a reaction to something else. You reacted, there's a new centre, and 20 years later, you're still doing it.
Yes.
That's quite remarkable. So tell us, books from on the floor. So tell us a bit more about the Hare Krishna Centre in Leicester in terms of what happens there and how can people get involved.
I tell you one story related to your question and related to what we talked before.
Yeah.
It was one Mataji. She wanted to get initiated from Chaipataka Swami. But because we are not ISKCON, we cannot, Gauranga Sundara cannot give recommendation. Cannot. He knows that Mataji was the last 15, 20 years, but he cannot be recommended authority. So you see, with the recommendation process, it's all bureaucratically streamlined, the total control as well. So then she came up with a question, cannot Parashuram in London recommend me? Because I'm helping out and serving with him, Ratha Yatra, and cooking and cooking and cooking. I said, yes, I can ask him. And Parashuram is a very liberal devotee. You may know Parashuram? Yes, you surely do. And she said, yes, no problem. So she got recommendation from Parashuram, and Chaipataka Swami accepted. And then the initiation, we were already very separate entities. ISKCON Leicester, Gauranga Sundara, non-ISKCON. Something else. I don't know what, something else. And so the fire yagya was going on at Samana with quite a number of initiates from ISKCON Leicester. And this Mataji sat next to me, and the fire was just about to start. And I said, okay, now you go. So she sat with them, and everybody looked. How can she? Anyway, it went through the fire yagya. But then the phone line to the Leicester management ran hot, very hot. The Mataji has been, who recommended? Parashuram. So Parashuram got a lot of flack for that, but he is very strong. He can take that. But the thing what happened from the Leicester management, they petitioned or demanded Chaipataka Swami after the initiation, you have to uninitiate her. Have you ever heard that? Ever?
I actually have an ISKCON, but I have heard it elsewhere, but I'm still equally as surprised.
Say, asking Chaipataka Swami to uninitiate her, and he said no. And then he was not welcome in the UK for a year. It's a manner. He went to Birmingham, where his disciples are. I mean, just such petty things. Okay, so what is going on?
Please.
This Mataji is famous now in the history. Very nice devotee. Very nice devotee.
And how long ago, just out of interest, how long ago was this initiation?
That was shortly after the split was there.
Okay. And she's still around now? She's still practicing Krishna consciousness?
Oh yes, she is our main cook.
Great. That's so good to hear.
Right. Yes. So what happens in
Yeah.
Leicester? We have a weekly program on a Saturday, 7 o'clock in the evening. Anybody welcome? Join us. We have installed deities, and that's another thing.
Wow.
We got deities installed. And Puri Maharaj, previously Balabhadra, no? Yes,
Yeah, I
Scotland?
know him. Yeah, I don't know him personally, but I know of him. Yeah.
Yes, well, I know him personally. We invited him, and he came. Blessing, and so his authority there. He got a lot of trouble for that. Why are you coming to an unauthorized? I'm just, he said, I'm just there like there are other senior devotees there, have been there, and so on. You installed this data? No, I mean, no. So installed deities with fire yagya, everything. Beautiful Gaunitai deities. That we serve these lords. Shri Shri Nitai Sachi Sundar.
Wonderful.
And we have a program regularly with class focus, all focus on Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is completely in the center. Some people speak of Prabhupada Nugas. Yes, we never have taken on that title or whatever, just whatever we call it. But Srila Prabhupada is in the center. And that's a blessing also. It's not one guru says this and one other guru, and it's all split in 100 of pieces. No, we don't have any problem with that. We just put Prabhupada in the center. It's like the stone thrown in the lake with the ripples harmoniously going from the middle to the outside. If you throw many stones, then you get a mess. And just one more thing regarding ISKCON. There's this beautiful conversation between Srila Prabhupada and Yamuna and Dayatarini Mataji, her friend. They lived outside the temple, and devotees in the temple said, you must live in the temple. If you don't live in the temple, you're not ISKCON. That was going on even there in the early days. We were preaching like that. So they approached Srila Prabhupada, we want to move into the temple. Srila Prabhupada said, you Westerners, you're so restless. Stay where you are. But they're saying we are not ISKCON. Then Srila Prabhupada said, ISKCON is wherever you chant Hare Krishna. That's a beautiful definition of ISKCON. It's not the legal definition, but Srila Prabhupada's definition, ISKCON is wherever you chant Hare Krishna. That's ISKCON.
I love that.
Yes.
And I remember a conversation that we had 3.5 years ago. You said the same thing to me then. You reminded me of Prabhupada's quote that ISKCON is wherever you chant Hare Krishna.
Yes. A different ISKCON. That's a spiritual ISKCON. Not a legal entity.
And what is your relationship, if at all, what is your relationship like with ISKCON now in 2023?
I haven't been going there for quite a long time, because why should I go there if some people are objecting? And of course, I have no voice. I cannot speak. And there is this story. I was invited to speak Bhagavatam for the London Soho Street led Zoom group. I was invited, and so I agreed to speak, and we had a beautiful Zoom conversation with their congregation, quite a good number of devotees there. And it came to, I engaged with the devotees. Maybe, I don't know if that was a normal modus operandi, or it was more or less a class. So there were a lot of questions coming, a lot of questions. And there was a lot of interest, and there was a good relationship with the congregation. So good that the person, the devotee who managed that group, he was inviting me again. This time he was advertising more widely. The first time he was just keeping it small. And the day before, I was supposed to speak on the Bhagavatam. He phoned me and he apologized and he felt so bad. He said, I'm told you cannot, Gauranga Sundara cannot speak. He's not ISKCON. He cannot speak anymore. And he said, I'm so sorry. I cried at night because a similar thing happened to me. And so I know how it feels, but that's my service. Otherwise, I'm out of the service and I have no service anymore. I know it is wrong, totally wrong. But I'm really drawn forth and back what to do. So I said, don't worry. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. And I followed a little bit through where it came from. I didn't get any answers. And eventually, yes, it comes from the leadership in Leicester. So that is still there.
Even after almost 20 years, you're
Yes.
being prevented or stopped from seva.
Yes.
Almost 20 years ago, they were trying to stop you from serving the Lord. And 20 years later, they're still trying to do it. It's unbelievable.
Well, and then you came along here. Please, Gauranga Sundara, speak. Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Refreshing.
Well, we here at the Hare Krishna Project, we have much more of an open door policy. We try to be as inclusive as possible. And you're guest number 99. And therefore, I've interviewed 99 people. And there's a good chance, Prabhuji, that I've disagreed with some of the guests. But that doesn't mean that they're not welcome. That doesn't mean that they are not entitled to their opinion or their say, you know. And I've hosting this podcast, I've really put, like you have in the past, I've put my neck really above the line here. You know, I remember when I interviewed the first Ritvik devotee, I got so much criticism. But you know what? I loved interviewing her. We had a great conversation. And even though I disagree with her on some issues, she's now a good friend of mine. Because we're mature and we're adults, we can have a conversation. And you know what's very interesting? Well, it's not. It is interesting, but it's not that bizarre. Is that for some reason I've been having a lot of conversations with the devotees in Leicester over the last couple of months. Krishna keeps sending me devotees from Leicester.
I see.
For good and bad reasons. Some of our previous guests on this podcast have been devotees from ISKCON Leicester. And then all of a sudden you kind of, you know, okay, I did a big podcast on black magic in ISKCON recently. And I'm saying this now publicly for the first time. ISKCON Leicester was one of the temples identified in my research where members of the congregation practice black magic. So all of a sudden, I got people from Leicester getting in touch with me to report all this black magic. That was so you know, it's there's certainly a lot of things kind of going on there. I'm conscious of the time. We've been recording for maybe an hour and 20 minutes, possibly. I mean, it's been great to have you as the guest on this podcast. I'm very enthused by your enthusiasm, and one of the things that I'm really inspired by about you is you're still serving after 20 years. This movement has lost so many people in the past because the management of ISKCON have kicked them down the road and told them that they're not valid, they're not loved, they're not important. You know, they're not part of the family, but actually we're all part of Prabhupada's family. You know, we're all part of Lord Chaitanya's movement. And I think you're an inspiration that 20 years later, your faith, which is not a word we often use in Krishna consciousness, your faith is so strong, so firmly rooted in Prabhupada that you're still there and in the same city. You didn't choose to go to another city.
I would have had less problems if I would have gone to another city. Yes. But why should I?
Yeah.
I had here all the contacts and all the friends and all the acquaintances, and I grew up with. So why should I go somewhere else?
You know, and Leicester's big enough.
Oh,
Leicester is big enough. You know, this is a very silly analogy, but I'm going to share it. I live in a village in Somerset, and we have about 7,000 people that live in this very big village. And for many years, we only had one coffee shop. Then all of a sudden, someone said, I want to open a second coffee shop. Oh, no, you can't do that because there's one coffee shop. I said, there's 7,000 people living here. There's enough people for two coffee shops. This is very silly. Leicester, there's enough people for two Hare Krishna centers. Actually, even more. You know, if everyone I mean, the population of Leicester must be 100,000, 200,000.
Hmm.
Wouldn't it be great if just 10,000 of those were going to either of the two centers? I mean, so I'm trying to put it into context, this kind of trying to stop people from serving. And I hope...
what's the context? In Leicester, almost every street has a mosque. But there cannot be two Hare Krishna centers.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
It's silly. It's very silly. And it's very childish, actually. It's very, very childish. I mean, in the village that I live in, we've got 4 churches, and they all get along, and they worship God together, and they pray together, and everyone's happy.
Don't, because the motive behind and the anxiety is the fundraising. We don't raise any funds. We don't need to raise any funds. We don't have any overheads. It's a private house, right? That is the beauty of it. Because if you have a big temple house, every Sunday you're doing fundraising, people are getting tired of it. It's just money, money, money. So we never ask anybody for money. We don't. Our congregation, we don't ask them for money. We don't need to.
You know, ISKCON, just generally across the UK, ISKCON doesn't have anything to worry about. ISKCON shouldn't be worried. ISKCON's got this worry that other people are going to other mats and that they should be stopped. But there's enough people to go around. The UK population is 68 million. You know, and I got this a lot when I did the research for my book on different mats and sanghas in the UK, and there was some concern that I was promoting the Sri Chaitanya Sarasat mat in London. There's 2 Srila Srila Maharaj temples. I mean, that people might leave ISKCON and go to them. Well, you're obviously feeling very insecure if you're worried that people are going to leave. If you love people more and include them, they might not want to leave.
No, they will never leave. You just love people, they will never leave. Exactly.
So I think we're going to stop the recording and you and I can have a brief conversation after. It's been a huge delight to have Gauranga Sundara Prabhu as our 99th guest on the Hare Krishna Project podcast. I'm so pleased that I finally got around to inviting him, and he thankfully said yes, which is wonderful. What I'm going to do, I will make sure that people watching this podcast can contact Gauranga Sundara Prabhu, and if they want to visit the Hare Krishna Centre in Leicester, it's on my list of things to do in 2024. So Gauranga Prabhu, I want you to hold me to that. And the thousands of people watching this podcast, please hold me to it as well, that I must visit the Hare Krishna Centre in Leicester. So don't forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button so you're kept updated about future podcasts. And if you're watching this on Facebook, please do like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page so you can keep updated about future podcasts. And you will soon see, as we reveal who our 100th guest will be. I'm looking forward to that as well. So until next week, I'll see you all soon. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.